Most people eating bread every morning have no idea what's actually in it. We investigated 10 of the biggest bread brands in America. Florida's Department of Health pulled them straight from grocery store shelves and sent them to a certified lab. 6 out of 8 came back positive for glyphosate, the active chemical in Roundup. Not on the farm. In the finished bread you're slicing and eating every single day. Here's what nobody's telling you. Some of the worst results didn't come from the cheap brands. They came from the ones with organic labels. The ones marketed to health-conscious families. The ones people pay extra for, specifically because they think they're making the safer choice. One brand tested above 1,000 parts per billion of glyphosate, one of the highest levels ever recorded in a packaged consumer bread. You're going to recognize the name. We're counting down all 10, from concerning to genuinely shocking, and finishing with the 3 brands that came back completely clean and are actually worth buying. Let's get into it. Number 10. Great Value Whole Wheat. This is Walmart's house bread. The one that fills carts because it's cheap, familiar, and always in stock. Before you open it, try something. Press on the bag. It doesn't feel like bread. It compresses completely and bounces straight back like a foam cushion shaped into a loaf. That's your first clue that something engineered is happening inside. The Detox Project and the Environmental Working Group found 340 parts per billion of glyphosate in Great Value whole wheat through independent laboratory testing. Regulators will tell you that's legal. The EPA's ceiling for glyphosate on wheat is 30,000 parts per billion, but that number was calculated for one chemical in one food for one healthy adult in isolation. It was never designed to account for someone already on blood pressure medication, already getting glyphosate from their morning cereal and afternoon crackers, now adding it again at dinner. Exposure stacks. The regulatory math doesn't. Walmart generated over $713 billion in revenue last year. Sourcing cleaner grain isn't a financial constraint at that scale. It's a margin decision. The 80 cents you saved came with something extra that was never listed on the label. Budget price. Contaminated grain and the next brand costs significantly more and delivers the exact same problem. Number 9. Market Pantry Organic. This one surprises people. Target spent years positioning itself as the smarter, cleaner alternative. Better design, more intentional sourcing. The store young families choose because it just feels different. Their Market Pantry whole wheat sandwich bread carries a USDA Organic seal. It tested at 348 parts per billion of glyphosate in independent laboratory testing. Higher than Wonder Bread, higher than Nature's Own. An organic loaf outscoring conventional bread in contamination. Here's how that happens. It's called drift contamination. When a conventional farm adjacent to an organic operation sprays herbicide, the mist doesn't stop at the fence line. It travels. The USDA Organic certification verifies that the producer didn't intentionally apply glyphosate. It does not verify that none arrived from a neighboring field. Drift testing isn't required. Target doesn't publish it. A parent reaches for this loaf specifically to protect their kids. They pay the premium. They see the seal. The certification is legitimate. The contamination is also legitimate. The law that would require anyone to disclose the gap between the two simply doesn't exist. Organic label, 348 parts per billion. No required disclosure. That's not consumer protection. That's a hole the industry has quietly decided to leave open. Number 8. Oroweat Organic. This is the craft brand that quietly stopped being one. 2 families started baking bread together in Los Angeles in 1932. They called it Oroweat. For decades, it was a genuine regional institution, family-owned, California-made, quality-focused. In 2009, Grupo Bimbo acquired it. Since then, Bimbo has also absorbed Arnold, Sara, Entenmann's, Thomas, Ballpark, and dozens more. One multinational now controls what most shoppers still believe are independent competing brands. When Bimbo absorbs a brand, the supply chain follows. Same flour suppliers, same wheat sources, the same grain potentially pre-harvest treated with glyphosate as a desiccant across their broader industrial network. The Environmental Working Group reported 70 parts per billion of glyphosate in Oroweat whole grains, 100% whole wheat, back in 2018. Bimbo reformulated certain products after those results went public. There has been no publicly available independent glyphosate testing on Oroweat Organic since. The last number on record is still 70 parts per billion from 2018. Bimbo generates $22 billion in annual revenue. If they're testing every batch, they haven't published the results. Longtime customers describe the pre-acquisition bread as denser, grainier, more varied in texture. What's on shelves today is uniform soft and engineered to hold that softness through a long retail window. You're paying for the logo. Everything else was replaced years ago. Number 7. Nature's Own. Flowers Foods is one of the largest bread companies in America. $5 billion a year in revenue. Nature's Own is their flagship, and the name is doing a lot of work. Natural, wholesome. A bread that implies it came from somewhere intentional. In February 2026, Florida's Department of Health tested Nature's Own butter bread. The result? 190.23 parts per billion of glyphosate. Their perfectly crafted white came back at 132.34. But the glyphosate is only part of the story. Read what else is in the loaf. Calcium propionate, a preservative that peer-reviewed research has connected to behavioral effects in children. Datum, a chemically modified fat used to strengthen dough structure. Sodium stearoyl lactylate, an emulsifier that maintains engineered softness for weeks past any natural freshness window. Squeeze the bag. That pillowy give isn't freshness, it's a formulation. In 2025, a video spread widely online showing someone filling a single slice of Nature's Own with water, wringing it out completely, and watching it spring back to its original shape without tearing. That's not bread. That's a sponge shaped into a loaf. In July 2025, a class action lawsuit was filed in California federal court alleging that Flowers Foods falsely markets certain Nature's Own products as containing no artificial preservatives while ascorbic acid appears on the ingredient label. Flowers has denied the allegations. At $5 billion in annual revenue, cleaner sourcing isn't out of reach. It just compresses the margin. And margin is what gets protected. If this loaf is in your kitchen right now, you know what you've been eating. If this investigation is already changing how you look at your bread aisle, you're about halfway through. The next few brands are where things get more serious, including a premium organic label, with no published test data at all. Number 6. Arnold Organic. Arnold has been on American shelves since 1940. When the organic line launched, health-conscious shoppers saw it as the answer. A legacy brand finally living up to its reputation. USDA Organic on the front, whole grains listed first. The combination that signals trust without requiring further investigation. Arnold is owned by Bimbo Bakeries USA. Same parent company as Oroweat. Same $22 billion industrial operation. Here's the specific problem. Sara Lee has been independently tested for glyphosate. Nature's Own has been tested. Dave's Killer Bread has been tested across multiple years by multiple independent labs. Arnold Organic, from the same parent company that owns all of them, has no publicly available glyphosate test results that we could locate anywhere. We're not claiming Arnold's numbers would match Sara Lee's worst result. We can't make that claim because the data simply doesn't exist publicly. What we can say is that Bimbo's track record across every other brand they control makes this silence difficult to explain. They paid for the organic certification. They haven't shown you what that certification actually delivers. The ingredient list adds context. Organic soybean oil, organic cane sugar, cultured wheat flour, ascorbic acid. These are not the components of traditional bread. The slices are geometrically uniform. The texture holds for weeks at room temperature. Real bread doesn't behave like that. Arnold carries a 2.4-star rating on major consumer review platforms. Shoppers report bread that's dry on first opening, declining quality year over year, and a price that keeps rising. 85 years of brand equity, no public test data. That combination isn't reassurance. It's a question the company has decided you don't need answered. Number 5. Wonder Bread. Wonder Bread doesn't claim to be organic. It claims to be the American family staple, the loaf your grandmother trusted, the one that belongs on every kitchen counter. Florida's Department of Health tested Wonder Bread Classic White in February 2026. 173.19 parts per billion of glyphosate. Now read the ingredient label alongside that number. Calcium sulfate, the same compound used in construction drywall. Sodium stearoyl lactylate, monocalcium peroxide, enriched bleached wheat flour, stripped of nutrients, bleached, then fortified with synthetic vitamins to replace what the processing took out. A loaf in the store, it collapses to almost nothing, then fully recovers. That behavior is the ingredient list expressing itself physically. Wonder Bread is owned by Flowers Foods, same parent company as Nature's Own, same supply chain. The long-term math matters here. 2 slices a day for 40 years is close to 30,000 individual servings. That's breakfast toast, lunch sandwich, and the bun at every backyard cookout for 4 decades. Exposure accumulates the same way. Here's something worth knowing. Your body begins reducing its chemical load as soon as you stop adding to it. The next clean slice matters more than every contaminated one behind you. But Wonder Bread sold you a grandmother's kitchen and delivered something she wouldn't have recognized as food. Number 4. Sara Lee Honey Wheat. Sara Lee has been in American kitchens for 70 years. Birthday cakes, holiday desserts. Honey wheat is their sandwich loaf. Honey in the name, wheat on the label. Warm golden packaging that signals something wholesome and carefully made. Florida's Department of Health tested Sara Lee Honey Wheat in February 2026. The result? 191.04 parts per billion of glyphosate. The highest single reading in Florida's entire testing round. Higher than Wonder Bread in that same lab. Higher than Nature's Own. Sara Lee posted the worst number in Florida's published data. Sara Lee is owned by Bimbo Bakeries USA, acquired in 2011, same parent company as Oroweat and Arnold. Read the label carefully. Honey is in the product name. Corn syrup is in the ingredients. One is marketing, the other is what's actually sweetening the bread. Keep reading, and you find calcium sulfate, the drywall compound again, alongside monoglycerides and datum. For anyone managing type 2 diabetes, that formulation is actively working against blood sugar control with every slice. In early 2025, a video spread widely showing Sara Lee bread sitting at room temperature for over 3 months with no visible mold. Week after week, unchanged. Bread that refuses to spoil was designed for a warehouse shelf, not a human body. Highest glyphosate reading in state testing. A sweetener that contradicts the brand name. 70 years of trust. Sitting on top of this, the next brand charges a premium for heritage it stopped honoring a long time ago. We're getting close to the brands that will genuinely surprise you. Number 3 in particular. A product many people consider the healthiest option in the aisle. Stay with us. Number 3, Pepperidge Farm. The red bag, the old-fashioned lettering, the name that sounds like a property with a stone wall and a kitchen garden. Pepperidge Farm has been baking since 1937. It's the bread people reach for when they want something that feels a step above everything else on the shelf. Pepperidge Farm is owned by the Campbell Company. Over $10 billion in annual revenue. Independent laboratory testing found 587 parts per billion of glyphosate in Pepperidge Farm 100% whole grain whole wheat bread. Their Jewish rye and pumpernickel deli swirl tested at 531 parts per billion. Nearly 3 times what Nature's Own recorded in Florida's testing. Worth noting, Pepperidge Farm Farmhouse Hardy White showed no detectable glyphosate in Florida's February 2026 testing. The brand isn't uniform across all products, but their whole grain and rye lines are among the most contaminated branded breads in any independent testing we reviewed. The reason is specific and worth understanding. Glyphosate is used as a pre-harvest desiccant. Some conventional farmers spray Roundup directly onto standing grain crops to accelerate drying before harvest. That final application happening days before collection concentrates residues directly in the outer hull of the kernel. Whole wheat bread retains that hull. Product marketed as the healthier choice can carry higher contamination than white bread made from flour that strip the outer layer away. Choosing whole grain in this case sometimes means choosing more exposure. The manufacturer of glyphosate, Bayer, which acquired Monsanto, has paid approximately $11 billion to settle nearly 100,000 lawsuits filed by people who developed non-Hodgkin lymphoma. In February 2026, Bayer proposed a further $7.25 billion settlement for current and future claims. Bayer continues to deny that glyphosate causes cancer. Pepperidge Farm carries a 2-star rating on major consumer platforms. Shoppers report a chemical off-taste, noticeable quality decline, and shrinkflation that reduced loaf weight from 22 ounce to 14 while the price held steady. You are paying a heritage premium for grain sourced the same way as every other industrial brand on this list. Number 2. Dave's Killer Bread. This is the brand health-conscious shoppers reach for with complete confidence. Bold graphic packaging, dense seedy loaves, a founder's redemption story on every bag. USDA Organic certified, non-GMO project verified. Nutritionists post about it. Trainers recommend it. It's in millions of kitchens right now because the people who bought it genuinely believe they've already solved the bread problem. Then, the lab results came back. The Alliance for Natural Health found 136 parts per billion of glyphosate in Dave's Killer Bread whole wheat. Florida's Department of Health found 11.85 parts per billion in their White Done Right variety and 10.38 in their 21 whole grains and seeds. Those numbers are lower than the conventional brands. That's the precise issue. Lower is not the same as zero. A brand that has built its entire identity on being the gold standard of organic bread and charges that price to match has made a specific promise, not a close call, a broken promise. You are not paying a premium for almost better. Flowers Foods acquired Dave's Killer Bread in 2015 for $275 million. Distribution expanded almost immediately from a regional Pacific Northwest operation to nationwide scale through Flowers' direct-to-store delivery network. The founder story stayed on the bag. The industrial supply chain moved in quietly behind it. Dave's Killer Bread is owned by Flowers Foods, the same $5 billion corporation that owns Nature's Own and Wonder Bread. Same parent company, same sourcing infrastructure. The packaging looks independent, the ownership structure isn't. In September 2024, a class action lawsuit was certified in California federal court, alleging that the company misleads consumers about the protein content on the front labels of their Good Seed and 21 whole grains and seeds varieties. Flowers Foods has denied the allegations. Consumer reviews include complaints about texture drier than crackers and documented confusion about whether the sprouted grain claims reflect what's actually in the loaf. Some people buy Dave's Killer Bread because it's the only bread their body tolerates. That makes the gap between what this brand promises and what the lab found more serious, not less. The story on the bag sells the product. The lab results describe what's inside it. And that brings us to number 1, the brand that made us question whether any label in the bread aisle means anything at all. Number 1. 365 by Whole Foods. Amazon owns Whole Foods. Whole Foods sells 365 brand organic bread. Independent laboratory testing found glyphosate at 1,040 parts per billion in 365 whole wheat sandwich bread. 1,040 parts per billion. That figure appears near the top of every independent test database of branded consumer bread we reviewed. Whole Foods built their identity around what they refuse to sell. Bromated flour? Banned. Artificial colors? Banned. Acrylamide? Banned. Their published list of unacceptable ingredients contains over 80 substances. Every part of the store experience communicates one message. Here, the standard is different. The test result doesn't match the message. Amazon acquired Whole Foods in 2017 for $13.7 billion. Since then, multiple former executives have spoken publicly about what changed internally. Errol Schweitzer, a former vice president who spent 14 years at the company, is among those who have publicly described a more centralized, more industrialized supply chain, replacing the sourcing philosophy Whole Foods was built on. Decisions driven by logistics metrics rather than ingredient standards. Reviews of 365 bread consistently describe dry texture, heavy crumbling, and slices structurally closer to cardboard than to bread. Multiple shoppers report holes large enough to make the loaf useless for sandwiches. The industry's response is predictable. They'll point out that 1,040 parts per billion is still below the EPA's legal ceiling of 30,000. What they won't mention is the 2015 King's College London peer-reviewed study showing that ultra-low doses of Roundup, below the levels regulators currently measure for, in human food produced measurable changes in gene expression across thousands of transcripts in the livers and kidneys of laboratory rats. Not industrial doses, not occupational exposure, ultra-low, below what the current regulatory system even tracks. Those tolerances were designed for a healthy adult in their 30s, consuming one chemical from one food. Not for someone in their 70s managing blood pressure, cholesterol, and thyroid medication, simultaneously adding bread residues on top of cereal, crackers, and pasta across the same afternoon. You did everything right. You paid the premium. You chose the store with the reputation. You picked the house brand organic loaf because you trusted what the store stood for. The laboratory found 1,040 parts per billion of weed killer in it. If the retailer that built its entire brand on refusing to compromise cannot keep its own bread clean, what does that tell you about everything else in that aisle? Now that you know what to avoid, here are the 3 that actually held up. These aren't consolation picks. They're brands that test their products, publish the results, and source their grain differently from the ground up. Best option number 3. Food for Life Ezekiel 4:9. Start with something most people don't know. There is no flour in Ezekiel bread. None. Food for Life sprouts 6 organic whole grains and legumes: wheat, barley, millet, lentils, soybeans, and spelt, then bakes them slowly at controlled temperatures to preserve nutritional density. This isn't a reformulated industrial loaf with better marketing. It's a fundamentally different process. Food for Life carries the biochecked non-glyphosate certified seal. This certification doesn't verify a process, it verifies a result. Glyphosate residues in the finished product are undetectable at the laboratory's detection limit. That's the standard every brand on the avoid list should be held to, and isn't. Ezekiel bread scores approximately 36 on the glycemic index. White bread typically scores 70 or higher. For anyone managing blood sugar, that's a meaningful difference, not a minor one. The ingredient list has 11 items, all recognizable as food. No added sugar, no preservatives, no dough conditioners, no compounds with construction applications. Food for Life has been family-owned and baking in Corona, California since 1964. No multinational acquisition, at least not yet. One honest corporation. The texture is nothing like the breads on the avoid list. Dense, chewy, hearty. Most people find it best toasted. Look for it in the freezer section, not the bread aisle. Without preservatives, this loaf molds at room temperature. That's not a flaw. That's proof you're holding actual food. Best option number 2. 1 Degree Organics. 1 Degree does something almost no other bread brand in America bothers to do. They publish the farm source for every single ingredient. Scan the QR code on the bag, and trace the wheat back to the specific field where it was grown. Not the country, not the region, the farm. 1 Degree carries the biochecked non-glyphosate certified seal, and according to the company, submits random product samples to accredited third-party laboratories every month. No regulation requires this. No law demands it. They do it because testing the product and publishing the results is the only way to actually prove what you're selling. The ingredient list: organic sprouted whole wheat, water, organic whole grain oats, organic cane sugar, yeast, sea salt, organic cultured wheat. That's everything. No datum, no calcium sulfate, no monoglycerides. Open a bag, and the grain smell is immediate. The texture pulls apart, instead of compressing and springing back. It tears. It behaves like something baked, not engineered. Distribution is still limited. You may need a natural grocery store, or a direct order. That inconvenience is real. And it's also what happens when a brand hasn't handed its supply chain over to a $5 industrial operator. Best option number 1. Silver Hills Sprouted Bakery. If Ezekiel's density is a significant texture adjustment, or you want a clean everyday sandwich loaf you don't have to think twice about, Silver Hills is the most practical recommendation on this entire list. Silver Hills is a Canadian family-owned company. All products carry the biochecked non-glyphosate certified seal, with residues verified below laboratory detection limits on an ongoing basis. When the WHO's International Agency for Research on Cancer classified glyphosate as probably carcinogenic to humans in 2015, Silver Hills publicly stated that classifications shaped their sourcing standards. That's a company responding to evidence rather than lobbying against it. Their loaves deliver fiber, whole grains, and protein per serving. The Omega Amazing variety is a verified source of omega-3 ALA, relevant for heart health. The full lineup is plant-based, nut-free, non-GMO verified, and certified vegan. In the United States, available at Sprouts, Whole Foods, and other natural grocery chains. In Canada, at Loblaws, Metro, and major national chains. Every batch tested, every result verified. No corporate parent running a margin calculation that overrides the sourcing standard. Reviewers consistently place Silver Hills among the best sprouted grain breads available. One customer with a documented wheat sensitivity noted her body tolerates Silver Hills when nearly every other wheat product causes her problems. And unlike Ezekiel, the texture is hearty but soft enough for a sandwich straight from the bag. The most approachable clean option for anyone making the switch, without wanting to rethink what bread feels like. The price is higher than the brands on the avoid list. Availability depends on your region. Both trade-offs are real. They're also the natural result of a company that tests every batch and sources exactly what it promises. Before you close this, here's the one rule worth keeping. Stop buying bread sold at room temperature with more than 5 ingredients on the label. That single rule removes almost every brand from the avoid list from your cart. No ownership research required, no lab data to memorize. In the store, flip the bag, count the ingredients. Real bread is flour, water, salt, yeast, and perhaps a small amount of healthy oil. 5 ingredients. Everything beyond that was added to extend the shelf, simulate freshness, or reduce sourcing cost. Look past the USDA Organic seal when you see it. It verifies that glyphosate wasn't intentionally applied. It does not verify that glyphosate isn't in the finished product. 2 certifications that require actual laboratory testing of the finished loaf are biochecked non-glyphosate certified and non-GMO project verified. One is a promise about the process. The other 2 are proof about the result. Buy from the freezer section when you can. Bread that survives weeks at room temperature was built for the supply chain. Bread that hardens or molds in a few days was built for you. If you bake at home, apply the same standard to your flour before it goes in the bowl. Clean bread costs more, roughly 50 cents a slice at the high end. That is still considerably less than managing long-term health conditions that accumulate from decades of daily contamination you were never told about. In the European Union, pre-harvest glyphosate application is heavily restricted. In the States, it remains standard practice. The residues it leaves behind sit on shelves next to organic certifications that were never designed to catch them. The labels were built to earn your trust without earning it. Now you know how to see through them. If this changed how you think about what's in your bread, passing it along to someone who buys these brands regularly is probably the most useful thing you can do with it.